she has to have a son very quickly. And ultimately, she doesn't have that son. And there's a lot of plotting and scheming behind the scenes in which Henry pretty much declares Anne a traitor. He says that she was cheating on him, committing adultery, that she committed incest with her own family members. He accuses her of horrific crimes, which she's declared guilty of, and she is formally beheaded along with her brother and her uncle. And so he basically just needs to get rid of her. And this is one of the tragic things about this story is that historians really don't know why Henry had to so brutally slaughter and kill his own wife, someone that he really, most people believe, really did love. So he kills Anne Boleyn and then he marries his third wife. So this is just a little bit of a family tree because if you're kind of getting lost here with all the wives, you'll really be lost with all the children. But if you look at this, we've got Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine. Every time he's married to a new woman, if they have a child together, if that's the current queen and they have a child together, that child becomes the new heir apparent or heir to the throne. So when Henry was married to Catherine, Mary was the heir to the throne. Then when Catherine is divorced and Henry marries Anne, Anne's daughter, Elizabeth, will be the new heir to the throne, and she will supersede her half-sister Mary. Okay? Now, when Anne is beheaded, he marries Jane Seymour, and Jane Seymour is the one that finally gives him that little boy, that male heir, Edward VI. And Edward, even though he's much younger than both Elizabeth and Mary, when King Henry dies, Edward becomes the new king of England, then Mary, and then Elizabeth. None of these kids really get along that well because they all had different mothers, and these two, Catherine and Anne, hated each other. They were also basically different faiths, and so their daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, are different faiths too. Mary's staunchly Catholic, and Elizabeth is Protestant. So there's a lot of family drama going on here behind the scenes. So the last part is what happens when Henry dies. So Henry will get married 3 more times before he ultimately dies. The last marriage is probably the most important because he basically was just securing a older widow who had a lot of wealth to sort of pay for and make sure his children, Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth, were well taken care of. So when Henry dies, Edward comes to power. And Edward's pretty young, and he only rules for, notice, 6 years, a very short period of time. And when he comes to power, this is when Henry's advisors really see an opportunity to make the Church of England a new Protestant church. Because Henry, although he wanted to declare himself leader of the Church of England, he didn't really make any Protestant changes when he was in power. He really just did it for his personal gain. So Edward's young, and the advisors are going to see this as an opportunity to really make Protestant changes. So they create a 42-article confession of faith, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's when the new Protestant religious officials and those who are supporting this will draft up 42 ways that they feel about their new faith, or 42 laws, 42 points about the new theology that they will worship. And it basically just reforms the Catholic doctrine to more Protestant ideas that revolve around Luther's ideas. The biggest contribute that Edward makes is the Book of the Common Prayer. He rewrites the Bible, which is known as the Book of the Common Prayer, which is still the Bible that is used in England today. But Edward dies of the measles at a young age. And then there's a question over these two. Who will rule, Mary or Elizabeth? Now, Mary's older. She's also currently married to the King of Spain. And Elizabeth is not married. There's a lot of support for both of them, and ultimately Mary wins. Now, Mary comes to power for only a short period of time, too. You see, 5 years. Mary is known as Bloody Mary. You've probably heard of her before. Did you ever play that game when you go in the bathroom and you turn off the lights and you look for Bloody Mary? This is who you're looking for. Bloody Mary Tudor. Why is she called that? Well, she's Catholic. Her mother was Catholic. She wants to Catholicize or return to a Catholic country. So she makes amends with the Pope in Rome. She launches a vicious, brutal campaign to persecute the Protestants in England, which is the majority of the population now. And she even goes as far as to kill, burning at the stake, many of her own clergymen in her country because they are now Protestant and not Catholic. She only lives for 5 years, and that's a good thing because when she's in power, the country is in shambles, and it's almost like in a civil war, brother against brother, but it's a religious conflict. So finally, we come to Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth is a very important historical figure. We'll refer back to her a lot in the future. Elizabeth is in power for a very long time, okay? And she never marries. She never makes things complicated. She had a rough childhood. Think about what happened to her. She witnessed her mother, her uncle, and her grandfather all beheaded. Then she saw the turmoil with her half brother and her half sister coming to power. So she's a really astute politician. And even though she is Protestant herself, she's going to make what's called the Elizabethan settlement. And basically, she's going to take some aspects of Catholic ideas and the basic core ideas of the Protestant faith and sort of mush them together and rewrite this article or confession of faith. Continue to use the Book of the Common Prayer. She's going to continue to be the head of the Church of England, but basically, she kind of ends all the religious conflict in England. And much of the reforms she makes bring us even into modern day times. In England today, the Queen of England, Elizabeth II, is still the head of the Church of England and still technically has control over all ecclesiastical affairs. And much of her power and the way the church is run stems from Queen Elizabeth I and the Elizabethan settlement. So the whole saga is quite lengthy, and I cut a lot of it out for you. And that just shows you, this just brings us to this chart where we have all four of these different faiths in a side-by-side comparison. And then that will bring us to our map. So after you finish this video, I have 2 quick slides that you're going to read. You're going to read the Act of Supremacy, and you're going to look at this map again. And there's a few questions that I would like you to answer and in a Flipgrid and post your own little 2-minute video answering the questions. Okay? If you have any other questions about the English Reformation, hold off till Friday. We'll probably do a call on Friday, or you can just shoot me a text or an email. Okay? Bye.